All right, so we'll start with our invocation. You can close your eyes and sit up nice and tall. Om Gyanatunandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurum Latam Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Shtipatam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Katamayam Tatati Svapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Pada Kamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavacha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghutavitanam Tam Sajivam Sarvatyam Savatutam Parijanam Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishkavitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Chakarapate Gopesha Gopikarada Kantara Tanamostute Tapta Kancha Gurungachara Te Vrindavaneshware Virisabhama Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Turubhishcha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitaram Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadarta Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so let's play 13.
देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरप्राप्तिः धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यते.
As the
embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change, or sometimes they say the sober soul is not bewildered by such a change. Since every living entity is an individual soul, each is changing his body every moment, manifesting sometimes as a child, sometimes as youth, and sometimes as old man. Yet the same spirit soul is there and does not undergo any change. This individual soul finally changes the body at death and transmigrates to another body. And since it is sure to have another body in the next birth, either material or spiritual, there is no cause for lamentation by Arjuna on account of death, neither for Bhishma nor for Drona, for whom he was so concerned. Rather, he should rejoice for their changing bodies from old to new ones, thereby rejuvenating their energy. Such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering according to one's work in life. So Bhishma and Drona, being noble souls, were surely going to have either spiritual bodies in the next life or at least life in heavenly bodies for superior enjoyment of material existence. So in either case, there was no cause of lamentation. Any man who has perfect knowledge of the constitution of the individual soul, the super soul, and nature, both material and spiritual, is called a dhira, or a most sober man. Such a man is never deluded by the change of bodies. The Mayavadi theory of oneness of the spirit soul cannot be entertained on the ground that the spirit soul cannot be cut into pieces as fragmental portions. Such cutting into different individual souls would make the supreme cleavable or changeable against the principle of the supreme soul being unchangeable. As confirmed in the Gita, the fragmental portions of the supreme exist eternally, sanatana, and are called kshara. That is, they have a tendency to fall down into material nature. These fragmental portions are eternally so, and even after liberation, the individual soul remains the same, fragmental. But once liberated, he lives in an eternal life in bliss and knowledge with the personality of Godhead. The theory of reflection can be applied to the Supersoul, who is present in each and every individual body, and is known as the Paramatma, who is different from the individual living entity. When the sky is reflected in water, the reflections represent both the sun and the moon and the stars also. The stars can be compared to the living entities, and the sun or the moon to the Supreme Lord. The individual fragmental spirit soul is represented by Arjuna, and the Supreme Soul is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. They are not on the same level, as it will be apparent in the beginning of the 4th chapter. If Arjuna is on the same level with Krishna, and Krishna is not superior to Arjuna, then the relationship of instructor and instructed becomes meaningless. If both of them are deluded by the illusory energy, Maya, then there is no need of one being the instructor and the other the instructed. Such instruction would be useless because in the clutches of Maya, no one can be an authoritative instructor. Under the circumstances, it is admitted that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord, superior in position to the living entity, Arjuna, who is a forgotten soul deluded by Maya or illusion. We were talking about that yesterday, that it's like shedding a sweater and then putting on a brand new sweater. So let's move on to the next Shloka.
मात्रा स्पर्शास्तु कौन्तेय शीतोष्णसुखदुःखदाः आगमापायिनो नित्याः तांस्तितिक्षस्व भारत.
O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to the Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magha, January, February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climactic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principle of the Kshetras. That's the caste or the warrior constitutions. And although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge, because by knowledge and devotion, only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya or illusion. The two different names of address given to Arjuna are also significant. To address him as Kunteya signifies his great blood relation from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's proper discharge of duties. Therefore, he cannot avoid fighting. Oops.
यं हि न व्यथयन्त्येते पुरुषं पुरुषर्षभ समदुःखसुखं धीरं सुमृतत्वाय कल्पते.
O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress is steady in both, is certainly eligible for liberation. Anyone who is steady in his determination for the advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. In the Varnashram institution, the fourth stage of life, namely the renounced order sannyasa, is a painstaking situation. But one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyasa order of life in spite of all difficulties. The difficulties usually arise from having to sever family relationships, to give up the connection of wife and children. But if anyone is able to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna's discharge of duties as a kshatriya, he is advised to persevere. Even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similarly beloved persons, Lord Chaitanya took sannyasa at the age of 24, and his dependents, young wife, as well as old mother, had no one else to look after them. Yet for a higher cause, he took sannyasa and was steady in the discharge of higher duties. That is the way of achieving liberation from material bondage. So sannyasa is the last stage of a life, according to the Vedas. It's when it could either happen after your kids have grown up and they're raised up and you're past retirement and you're ready to sort of settle down and give up all of your worldly possessions as you prepare for your transition. And that would be when you take sannyasin, you're sort of like legally dead. If in India you throw your your walking stick into the river and or you don't have any possessions, you sort of you can live in ashram, you can move from place to place in the forest, subsisting on roots and berries from the forest and fruits and things like that. And then you'll see the sannyasins in the street. And, you know, if they ask you for food in India, you're supposed to give them food. It's like a very bad thing not to provide food to them because everyone's sort of on the same path, like with the same intention. And they know at one point they may be in that position. So they all provide, like if you have a sannyasin who knocks on your door asking for food, you go and you get them food. Um, but this idea is that without any material possessions, it's bless you, it's going to be a little bit easier to let go as you're ready to move on. Some people don't want to take the role of the householder, so they go straight to the renunciate stage. So for some, it's you know, you're brahmachari or celibate as you learn. Usually that's up to age 18, and then you get married, right? And you have your job and you take care of your family. And then as you're retiring, you're going to take that last stage of giving up your possessions. Usually a husband and wife may do this together. But for others, it's as soon as they're done with the brahmachari stage, they want to move on to sannyasa. Okay.
नासतो विद्यते भावः नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयोरपि दृष्टोऽन्तः त्वनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः.
Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non existent there is no endurance, and of the existence there is no cessation. The seers have concluded by studying the nature of both. There is no endurance in the changing body, that the body is changing every moment by actions and reactions of the different cells as admitted by modern medical science, and thus growth and old age are taking place in the body. But the spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all changes of the body and the mind. That is the difference between matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever changing and the soul is eternal. This conclusion is established by all classes of seers of the truth, both impersonalist and personalist. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that Vishnu and his abodes all have self illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotismi Vishnur Bhavani Vishnu. The words existent and non existent refer only to spirit and matter. That is the version of all seers of the truth. This is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves the reestablishment of the eternal relationship between the worshiper and the worshipable and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can understand the nature of the Supreme by through study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme Being understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. In the Vedanta Sutras, as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. The living entities belong to superior nature, as it will be revealed in the 7th chapter. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy or nature is accepted as the subordinate. The living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as is in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance, and to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches the Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities for all time. All right, we'll do one more and then we'll meditate.
अविनाशि तु तद्विद्धि येन सर्वमिदं ततम् विनाशमव्ययस्यास्य न कश्चित् कर्तुमर्हति.
Know that which pervades the entire body is indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread all over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body, in part or as a whole. This spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasures of one's body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul, and the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. This soul is described as 1/10,000th part of the upper portion of the hair point in size. The Svetasvatara Upanishad confirms this. Balagrasata Bhagasya Satada Kalpitasya Cha Bhago Jivasa Vijnanya Sakanantyaya Kalpate. When the upper point of a hair is divided into 100 parts, and again, each of such parts is further divided into 100 parts. Each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul. Similarly, in the Bhagavatam, the same version is stated. Kashagra Sata Bhagasya Satam Sadrastmaka Jiva Suksma Svarupoyam Sankyatito Hai Chitkanam. There are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms, which are measured as 1/10,000th of the upper portion of the hair. Therefore, the individual particle of spirit soul is a spiritual atom smaller than the material atoms, and such atoms are innumerable. This very small spiritual spark is a basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. This current of the spiritual soul is felt all over the body as consciousness, and that is the proof of the presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of material administration. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination, but to the spirit soul. In the Mundaka Upanishad, the measurement of the atomic spirit soul is further explained. Eso Nuratma Chetasya Vedivayo Yasmin Prana Panchada Samvivishe Pranais Chitam Sarvam Otam Prajanam Yasmin Vishude Vipatye Asa Atma. The soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air: prana, the upward movement of energy through the body; apana, the downward movement of energy through the body; vyana, movement all over the body; samana, at the center, outward; and udana, which connects the upward and the downward, and sort of the physical and the superphysical, is all situated within the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of the 5 kinds of material errors, its spiritual influence is exhibited. The Hatha Yoga system is meant for controlling the 5 kinds of air, encircling the pure soul by different kinds of sitting postures, not for any material profit, but for liberation of the minute soul from the entanglement of the material atmosphere. So, the constitution of the atomic soul is admitted in all Vedic literature, and it is also actually felt in the practical experience of any sane man. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as all pervading Vishnu Tattva. The influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over a particular body. According to the Mundaka Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity. And because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of the material scientists, some of them assert foolishly that there is no soul. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart, along with the super soul, and thus all the energies of bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles, which carry the oxygen from the lungs, gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. Such atomic particles of the spirit whole are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine, there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called by the name of Prabha, or superior energy. Neither Vedic knowledge nor modern science denies the existence of the spirit soul in the body, and the science of the soul is explicitly described in the Bhagavad Gita by the personality of Godhead himself. So we'll be ending on text 18. What are your thoughts, ladies? You can unmute yourself. Ideas, questions.
So if Alexandra was here, she might ask questions about was that text 15? About someone who commits to being a householder and then pulls out early on. So I cannot find, yes, Lord Katyana,
Chaitanya, yeah.
Katanya. And he took sannyasa. Is that how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he took it at the age of 24 when when it looks like he had committed to caring for his mother, and of course he was married. It doesn't say anything about children. So, so I know this is not an unusual story. Holy men, especially holy men, do that. They just pull away from their lives and do something different. Even Mahatma Gandhi did. But the different thing that they do involves abandoning prior commitments.
Yeah. There are stories about these women sages who did it too. Yeah.
But it's sort of just like Alexandra had trouble with the murders and slayings and that kind of thing. And she does, and I understand her difficulty with it. I kind of have trouble with, no one looks at someone who is involved in a relationship and maybe has children, who then skips out and lives a wild and crazy life. No one looks fondly upon that person, or no one considers that person necessarily morally, I shouldn't say no one. I don't consider that person morally justified to do that. Not that, and the best I can do is, maybe there's something totally wrong with the relationship, or maybe this person is incapable of holding to that commitment. But in this instance, it's somebody who decides, no, there's a higher commitment and I'm going to go do that. So how does that fit within the framework of, how does it even fit within the framework of making a higher commitment if you're, ditching your primary commitment?
That's a good question. Well, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's like shutting, in a sense, you have to shut your judgment because we do often judge, like, oh, well, you had this prior commitment, and I guess we can't really say what's going on in everyone's, shit situation. Oh, sorry.
Sounds like somebody's smoke alarm.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm gonna mute it so you guys don't hear it, but hold on.
So yeah, I mean it's hard to say, right? People break up. People get with new partners, they make commitments and they break those commitments. We're looking at a culture here where there were a lot of arranged marriages too from a young age. So breaking that commitment might be in a different, I don't know, might be viewed differently from the external.
I'm not talking about moving away from a partnership as such. I mean that happens all the time. But this is somebody who in today's terms would be somebody who was, let's say, married or living with somebody and had, let's say, some kids, and then decides this isn't my life. I'm going to go be a monk. I'm pulled to this. I can't not be pulled to this. But when you go to be a monk, any sort of support for the material life of the people you were living with before or taking care of before might feasibly end, right? No
Yeah.
more work, no more paycheck, etc. No more working for money, at least. No more paycheck, etc.
But there were different kinds of families back then too. It wasn't like the individualistic kind of families we have in America where the mother is left with the children and there's nobody to help. They lived in villages with extended family. The I think it was patriarchal where you would move into the mother-in-law's house. There were a lot of other people around, which is also something else to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I understand as a mother how pissed I would be if my husband decided to just say I'm giving up the world, but there's also like a higher, in the culture there was a higher reverence for that kind of particular. It's like, I guess you could relate it to Catholicism when the son decides he wants to be a priest, and like especially in Italian family, it's like, oh, you're going to be a priest, how wonderful, how great, um I feel like it depends. Like, I have a friend who grew up in a Vedic culture, and her father left to be a sannyasi, and the mother was, resentful, but they ended up getting remarried when he decided to stop being a sannyasi, and he came back and they got remarried, and they're all like a happy family now. So it's like she said it was like a weird and interesting point in her life when that happened, but she ended up becoming a yoga teacher. Like, his interest in the whole thing very much affected her and planted deep seeds. And they had a tradition of all the men in the family, deeply studying the Vedas. Some of them were like wrote books on it, So yes, as everyone says, it's a very different culture, and maybe sort of it wouldn't fit right into the culture we're living in. So maybe it's hard to perceive or understand.
No, you're right. It is. You're absolutely right. There's all different levels of support there for families than there are here. I mean, um, I'm on Long Island. I do not have any family closer than 400 miles to
Oh.
me. And many of my good friends have moved away. So if this was 35 years ago and I was here with my first baby, and my husband decided there's a different life I want to live, and it was even a quote unquote good different life, a meaningful different life. I don't think I would have opened the door for him if he came back 15 years later.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
Yeah.
I hear you on that.
Like, did it work out for you, honey? It didn't. Oh, well, this is working out for me now. So,
The first time I read Mahabharata, I got so frustrated. I threw the book across the room. And I stopped reading it because Arjuna's going around and he's like getting all these different wives. And the idea is like they are very responsible for each wife. He financially takes care of each wife and child, he creates a house for them. And I was like, I can't get down with this. I can't get down with this. And then I had a kid isolated in freaking Corona times, and I was like, I get the sister wife thing. Jesus, if I just had like someone else to help me clean and cook and we could take care of each other's kids, and like, I get it now, So in this culture, there was also this aspect of polygamy, like in both directions. In some towns in India, the wife would have several husbands. But like, there's also that possibility to think about, that like maybe they're not just leaving them alone. But I don't know, I don't know the particular circumstance of Chaitanya. I have to look into that.
well,
But
it was just,
Ayurveda, there's this oh, sorry, was somebody saying something?
yeah, I don't, you know what, the bottom line is, it's another reminder that what exists today is not what existed even 40 years ago. So,
It's
and
true.
you have to think about the cultural context of the time and what was available or not available at the time. So it still might be a terrible thing, but maybe not so terrible because it's mediated by so many other factors.
Right, that's the thing. And like a lot of people get frustrated reading Prabhupada's description of the book, but like you have to realize this was written quite a bit of time ago, and he was like in his 80s when he was writing all this stuff. So he comes from a culture where gender roles are very, very defined. Like the woman is cooking and taking care of everything, and in the home and all that. So I know that women particularly read this and get pissed too, but like I always try to remind people of the cultural context. And so I was going to say, in Ayurveda, like I always thought about this, and I tried to cultivate it for myself here when I had my baby, and my family members really stepped up, which was amazing. And I think I had a totally different experience than a lot of my friends because of that. But you have like a clan of women around you after the baby comes. They're all cooking for you and massaging you with oils, and they're giving you special teas, and they're making you all
That would be great.
Yeah, right. And like I feel like I was fine breastfeeding because of that. Like I got to rest for 40 days. I had a laying in period, which is traditional in Ayurveda, but most women don't get that. They're running like they have this big gaping hole inside of their bodies, and they still have to pretend like they're okay and running around and taking care of the kid and cleaning and cooking. And some people even have to go back to work after a few weeks. It's so wild because they teach, even in Western medicine, it takes 40 days for the uterus to go back to everything to shrink, the cervix, everything to shrink back to where it was, and for the organs to go back into place. Women are walking around like working so hard with their organs out of place. It's a very sensitive, dangerous period to be doing that. And like postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression is so high in our culture. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that these systems of support for women have fallen away, and we're very, very isolated now, and we're expected to be a man and a woman simultaneously, and it's just too much. So like, yeah, that idea of like the one person who might be helping you, your husband leaving, it's like, oh, forget it. It wouldn't work right now. It wouldn't happen.
No, not unless you had the kind of situation that you were.
Yeah, and I had to rally. I had to be like, this is what we're doing, guys. I made a schedule. I had a recipe book. I was like this. I taught everyone how to cook Ayurvedically before I went into labor, and everyone thought I was out of my mind. My mother-in-law thought I was abs. She's so cute though. Like she would do it, but she's like, they went to the Indian supermarket for me.
Yeah.
And they said it was like going to another country. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they were like, it was amazing. We had this man who helped us. There were so many strange things that were like such a culture shock.
Yeah. She must have had a great time though. Look at all that she got because you made crazy demands, which weren't so crazy. I have to, after I had my first baby, my husband stayed home for a week or so, and then he had to go back to work. Both my mother and mother-in-law lived in Florida, and we were on Long Island. My closest relative was a sister-in-law who lived in Massapequa, who was in the middle of postpartum depression herself. There was no one around, and I didn't drive because, and I literally remember when Ben was about, I don't know, 2 months old, and I have him, I'm taking him out for a walk in the stroller, and of course it's winter. And there is a woman about a block ahead of me walking somebody, I don't know how old, in a stroller. And I literally ran after her. And my greatest depression was that she reached her house and closed her door before I could catch up to her. Probably because she saw a crazy woman running after her with a stroller. But then, and I remember thinking it really should not be like this. And but
it should not. It's too much.
But anyway, so well, thank you for going through all that. Nothing like cultural relevance.
I try to make my work like, how can we integrate what worked back then into now, and just like not integrate what didn't work back then. Like, how can we sort of take these lessons and benefit from? Yeah, I'm the crazy person now. Like, even people I'm not that close with, like if they have a kid in our circle of friends, like I am there the first couple of weeks. I'm dropping food at their door. I'm like trying to get in and do the laundry, and they're like, no, you don't have to come and clean my house and do the laundry. But it's like, everyone needs that. Everyone needs it, and they're always so grateful afterwards. And it's like, I'm not doing it for any benefit of my own. It's like going through war together, like I've been through it. I know. I'm here now.
Yeah. And that's it. I feel like only women understand. Like, men don't get it. Like, Andrew, I kicked him out. I was like, go back to work. Like, you're not helpful. Within like the first week of having Alana, I was like, no, this doesn't work for me. You're just like chilling, doing nothing. I'm going crazy, and I'm watching you do nothing. Like, you need to go back to work. You can't, you don't get paternity leave. Oh my goodness. I made him go back to work, and my mom came and stayed with me and helped me with everything.
Lee was better than that. He was extraordinarily helpful, and he would do anything. And he was one of the guys who watches and sees what needs to be done. He still does that to this day. When our oldest kid is 35.
Stu has the best husband in the world, by the way. Just FYI.
Yeah, he's that really helpful.
Is special.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, but
yeah, it's not in some of their wheelhouses. Like, they were never taught. The ones who taught, it makes a big deal. I was like, I made Mark. I was like, Mark, you're going to be involved. I made him like take all the classes. I even asked him, I said, can you go do a doula training?
Oh my gosh. Did he do it?
No, he didn't do it, but he read a bunch of the books from my friend's doula training. So
at least he did that.
He was holding my foot. He was coaching me on. He was like making me the teas afterwards, changing the diapers. He was doing all that, but like it required a lot of like learning on both of our parts.
Yeah, it is a major adjustment, and there is very little in our current culture to model that kind of behavior from.
Right.
Very little. And in fact, everybody thinks it's so cute that the guy's sitting there watching football while you're trying to breastfeed and clean up a spilled thing of applesauce that's all over the floor. It's not cute. It's not cute. It is rage-inducing, but because there is no cultural model for the good partner,
right?
Which is too bad. Especially since the social supports that existed so long ago are very rarely around.
Yeah, it's a big problem, but I mean, it's good your son's got that modeling from your husband. Hopefully.
Well, I watched Joe now dealing with my first grandson, Willie, who is about 5.5 months old now. And he has, of course, Brittany basically is the type of woman who said, you're either in or you're really out. You better be in, And but he did. He learned it. Well, I think he's got the same kind. He came into the world with the same kind of karmic consciousness that Lee did, which is very compassionate, very sensitive, and very helpful. And and he learned a lot from watching Lee live that. So it's good.
That's great. That's really great. That's all you could do. Try to raise good kids. You did a good job.
Yeah.
All right, so let's meditate and do a little pranayama. Let's do some. We're a little late, so we're just going to do alternate nostril breathing. So you could take your right hand and pull the peace fingers into the center of the palm, closing off the right nostril with the thumb. Inhale through the left nostril, close off both nostrils, and exhale out the right. Inhale through the right, close both, and exhale through the left. Inhale through the left, close off both, exhale through the right. Inhale through the right, close off both, exhale through the left. Inhale through the left, close off both, exhale through the right. Inhale through the right, close off both, exhale through the left. And you can continue as long as you feel you need it. And when you're ready, you'll settle into meditation practice. You're either working on relaxing the body, you could be working on creating a serene breath, observing the stream of thoughts through the mind, identifying thoughts as beneficial or not beneficial, and then favoring the beneficial. Or maybe you're moving into a spinal breath if you've accomplished all of those other skills. Inhaling so to the base of the spine, exhaling hum to the crown of the head. Bringing the hands to prayer, bowing the head. Namaste.
Namaste.
Have a wonderful day, Sue. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Have a good day too. The sun is
Okay.
shining here.
Oh,
Fine.
good. I'll be going outside with the kid then.
Yeah, really. Okay, take care.
Bye.